The second segment of the Nightly News is brought to you by Labrie Credit Union. Labrie Credit Union. We are not a bank. We are better. Welcome back. Education curriculum specialists are working on a language policy for the teaching of Creole language in schools on the island. They are hoping to have the completed implementation plan and already formulated draft policy presented to the government of St. Lucia by January of 2022. Chris Satney tells us more in this report.
The National Language Policy is a document which looks at the role of Creole in education, specifically at the primary and secondary levels, ensuring that students at those levels are competent in reading, writing, and speaking the Creole language, much in the same way they do standard English. The Ministry of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology, and Vocational Training recently held a National Language Policy Implementation Planning Conference for the Curriculum and Materials Development Unit, CAMDU. The online forum, which brought together professionals from across the Caribbean region, sought to get an idea of best practices and the considerations for putting an implementation plan together to ensure that Creole gets the recognition it deserves. Curriculum Officer for English Language with CAMDU, Angel Caglin, says the deliberations coming out of the recently held conference will help formulate that strategy, including a distinction made between a national language policy and an education language policy.
Some other interesting points were the presentation of actual language instruction, methodology and approaches being used by our Martinican counterparts, both at the primary and the secondary level. One of the major or the most outstanding aspects was the level of support available to teachers in terms of coaches and even inspectors ensuring that the language was being taught as it should.
The language curriculum specialist says the plan is to have the completed strategy for implementation of the policy early in the new year, along with the already completed draft policy document. She says the overall aim is to improve student literacy development full circle, affording the Creole language the same official status as the standard English dialect.
Literacy development should always begin with students' first language, their native languages, their home languages, and understanding the influence that Creole has had on students' development of other languages. It is important that this language, not just for linguistic purposes, but also for cultural purposes, be preserved and that the literacy in this language be developed.
Based on research, officials are expecting that students' literacy levels will improve since they will be able to transfer the skills developed in their home language to other languages that they will learn.
It also means that we must have teacher professional development and teacher certification and training so that they can bring across or use the appropriate methodologies and present the language in a way that students will be able to understand all of the content area subjects. Further afield, it means the development of resources. It means the development of content that can be used in the classroom. And of course, we can just imagine the impact that this is going to have outside of the classroom as well.
Ms. Caglin says it is also expected that a lot of commercial opportunities will be created from the preparation of materials to be used for Creole instruction within the classroom. From the Communications Unit of the Ministry of Education, Sustainable Development, Innovation, Science, Technology, and Vocational Training, I am Chris Satney reporting.
St. Lucia has joined the Global Committee in observing September as Sickle Cell Awareness Month. Minister of Health and Wellness, Honorable Moses Jean-Baptiste, is encouraging St. Lucians to be part of the observance.
September is observed as Sickle Cell Month here in St. Lucia. I wish all who are living with the sickle cell condition well. Sincere gratitude to all medical and civil society organizations who have worked hard and continue to be dedicated to better outcomes for all who need help. Let us join in the observance of Sickle Cell Month.
St. Lucia has received a much-needed batch of oxygen concentrators from the government of Taiwan. The equipment is expected to be of great value in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic.
The government of the Republic of China, Taiwan, recently handed over 30 oxygen concentrators to the Ministry of Health to support its response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The oxygen concentrators are expected to improve the quality of care provided to patients requiring oxygen. Minister for Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, the Honorable Moses Jean-Baptiste, expressed gratitude to the government of Taiwan for the donation and hopes it will assist in the management of critical COVID-19 patients.
The administering of oxygen is a critical component in the management of hospitalized patients. The ministry must ensure adequate supply of oxygen to meet the needs of these hospitalized patients. The Ministry of Health recognizes this donation of oxygen concentrators as another in a series of material, financial, and technical support that the Republic of China and Taiwan is providing to St. Lucia in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic.
Taiwanese ambassador to St. Lucia, His Excellency Peter Chen, says his government remains committed to assisting St. Lucia in the fight against COVID-19 and hopes these oxygen concentrators will save lives.
This donation is just one thread of the tie bonds binding our countries together. I look forward to working with Prime Minister Philippe Jeppier and his cabinet to bring about even more fruitful bilateral cooperation in Fair Helen. As Ambassador of Taiwan to St. Lucia, I am filled with pride to see the good acts forged by our good friendship. I hope the machine serves St. Lucians well as they fully recover.
Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sharon Belma George says these oxygen concentrators are very essential as they will improve the Ministry of Health's capacity to deliver oxygen to patients needing respiratory support.
The sustainable use of oxygen increases greatly during surges of respiratory illness. And we rely a lot on the use of the oxygen tanks within the hospital. And the turnover increases vastly as our patient load increases, as we have been seeing over the last 2 weeks at our respiratory hospital. So these units allow us supplemental oxygen. They use electricity and they use the oxygen from the air and converts it into oxygen which the patients can use. So it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot easier to make available within the patient rooms, or if we have persons who are moderate and also need or care for managing at home.
The Ministry of External Affairs, International Trade, Civil Aviation and Diaspora Affairs were also thanked for the efforts in making this donation possible. Reporting from the Communications Unit of the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, I am Fidel Neptune.
Several Caribbean countries are moving to high alert and warning their population about the calamity that could follow if they refuse to take the vaccine in large numbers. The Prime Minister of Grenada and St. Vincent have made it very clear that they are preparing for the worst, particularly with the advent of the Delta and new variants in the Caribbean.
Big tonight. Grenada is setting up a committee to decide effectively who may live and who may die should the health system be overwhelmed by rising COVID-19 cases there. Health Minister Nicholas Steele Tuesday said what is called an ethics committee is being set up. Steele said the committee should be up and running this week.
The healthcare team will be forced to choose who lives and who dies.
We ask in all the departments, all the different areas, to check for body bags because you have to prepare. And to make arrangements also for the use of any refrigerated container.
Stay tuned. We have more news coming up after the break. The second segment of the nightly news was brought to you by Labrie Credit Union. Labrie Credit Union. We are not a bank. We are better.